Um, and it was a challenging time for my family, I'll tell you. A really challenging time. I was not pleasant to be around. I hid it well from anybody else, but I didn't hide it well really from my family. And I was dealing with some other stuff as well that I won't get into because it's not my story to tell. But again, you know what? I look at it now like I do how my first marriage ended. Had I not gone through that crash, I wouldn't have the inner strength and the mindset to be dealing with what I'm dealing with now, which is, I ended 2022 with a cancer diagnosis.
Welcome to another episode of the Life Balance Mentor podcast. Today's going to be a little different. I actually have a very good friend of mine, Robert Gaudet, on as a guest. And in this episode, we're just going to have a frank conversation about life, about business, about relationships, and about some of the challenges and struggles people go through, not only as entrepreneurs, but, as fathers, as friends, as husbands, as people. So hopefully you guys enjoy this episode. So Robert, welcome to Life Balance Mentor podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Kurt.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you as my first guest. I know we've known each other for quite some time, but if you can kind of share a little bit about your background with our audience, that'd be great.
Oh my gosh. Let's see, I'm 55, which doesn't define me, but just to give a little bit of context. When I was younger, I thought working my way up the corporate ladder was what I was meant to do in order to take care of my family. Got married around 30 years old. Had 2 kids very quickly, and always wanted to be a father, but got caught up in that role that many men my age think they're supposed to take up, with being the earner, the breadwinner for the family. And as a result, I didn't really see my kids. I didn't participate all that much for the first 4 and 2 years of their lives. I look back at pictures back then, and most of them are of me laying on a couch sleeping on the weekend with a child on me. There weren't a lot of vacations. There weren't a lot of family type activities, at least that I was driving. And as a result, one of the determining factors was for ending my marriage at the time. And you don't know it at the time, but it was probably the best thing that could have happened. And although my ex-wife and I don't have a great relationship to this day, she made the right call, and she made the right call for both of us. I wouldn't have made it. I would have just stayed unhappy. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I think I became much more of an involved and a better father as a result, because I got to be a part of their lives. I would drive them to hockey, to figure skating, to school. I was very invested in their upbringing. I was volunteering at their school. So, I even took, I think, a couple of times during that period of time, I left my job and took a year off just to spend time with them. But you have to pay the bills, number one, right? So you can't do that indefinitely. And you do need some personal fulfillment. And a lot of my personal fulfillment comes from work. I enjoy working. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will laugh when they hear that, because, I like to tell people I don't want to work. I want to be a lazy investor. And that is true. I just don't want it to be the only thing that defines me, and I don't want to have to do it. So I did that a couple of times, and the third time it was, I have to go back to work and I have to make money, right? And I was getting sick, physically ill at the idea of going back and working for someone else
Mm-hmm.
because I suffered from that disease of I know better than any of my bosses. And, you know, I'm trying to get rid of that disease slowly but surely. but I suffered from it big time back then. And I found myself buying a small franchise. And, that's the quickest way to not retire, I'll tell you. Being a small business owner where you are your every employee. So that ended a number of years later. And one day got into attending a seminar with my current spouse, Pam. And we started taking courses, learning about things that I had never heard of, just blowing my mind and being exposed to this by this gentleman from Missouri, who to this day, although I'm a couple of weeks older to him, I still look up to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a phenomenal human being and played a huge part in my life and my success, and love him to death. Do a 1 hour free seminar. I would never have been exposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was very close-minded about it. But it's opened my mind to doing so many things, and it's truly been a blessing in my life. It truly has been a blessing in my life. I got to be part of my kids' lives. I'm not a perfect father, and there have been times where my kids and I haven't seen eye to eye, but they know it's never for a lack of caring and wanting to be involved in their lives. So it's been quite the journey over the last almost 7 years.
So how have you been able to, after going from, as you said, a partner and a father that wasn't present early on, obviously, getting divorced, forces you to a degree, if you're spending 50% custody with your kids or however that works out, that time is now just you. So outside of that, was there anything that you did to change how you interacted with your kids as you were going through that until, meeting your current wife, Pam, and then you guys also have your son together as well. So were there lessons that you learned from early on that when you had now your youngest son that you've kind of taken to change how you spend time with him, how you spend time with your wife now?
I think you always look back and think you could have done things differently or better. I think I'm my own biggest critic especially when it comes to parenting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'm happy. I'm actually content with a lot of the things that I did. I went to all the hockey games, all the soccer games, all the figure skating, whether they were with me that week or not. I scheduled trips around my schedule with them. We had little adventures here and there. They're still friends with a lot of the kids they met during that period of our lives. So would I have done anything differently? I don't think so. What I do differently with Noah, my 10-year-old, I'm a lot older having him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not as sociable with the other parents. I'm not as involved at the school as I was. That's not entirely due to age or personality. I guess it's just a combination of things and life, what goes on in life. The old adage, life happens. And
Mm-hmm.
Since Noah has been born, I've had a number of health challenges, and building a real estate business during that time, dealing with some family stuff. So, I think that all plays a part in how you deal with the individual in your life, as well as, I guess, the macro aspect of your life. So, yeah, it's different, but he's also being raised in a different age with different people in a different environment. So is he missing out on anything? No, I don't think he is.
Hmm.
Did my older kids miss out on anything? You know, maybe having two parents together, but frankly, they have a loving mom who cares about them dearly. They have a loving dad who cares about them dearly. And I think we are better parents to them apart than we would have been had we stayed together. So I think their lives are better. Is it perfect? It's never going to be perfect,
Hmm.
regardless of the situation. But I think it's more, you don't treat everybody the same. As much as you say you treat all of your kids the same and you treat all, no, you don't. You treat them as the individual they are. You speak to them as an individual. You have things that you do with all of them the same, but you also handle them each according to their needs, their personality. My kids are all three very different. You can see similarities, but they're all very different people.
Hmm.
Very different people, and they're all. You know what? I'll tell you, when my day of judgment comes, all three of them are much smarter than their dad, and that makes me happy.
That is a huge achievement when you can look at your kids and know that their futures can be brighter than yours, and hopefully along the way they are aware of their potential, and they see what their parents have gone through, how they've grown, how they've changed. And kids don't always listen, but I think they do watch and observe as much as we don't know it. But there will come a time in life where they're like, yes, I remember when my dad did this and he did this, and where he said something that's going to have that impact on them that hopefully, flips that switch that helps them become the people that they were meant to become.
I think you learn more. I tell my kids, I am not a perfect person by any means. I am a flawed man. But think about it. I used to make fun of myself for saying that, but where do you learn most from? Your mistakes or your successes?
Mistakes.
So you know what? Maybe it's not so bad that I'm a flawed man.
I think it's a great skill that, especially people that are trying to start their own businesses. When you're in kind of the job, you make mistakes, but those mistakes don't necessarily have a direct impact on you. It's more the business, maybe your boss, maybe coworkers, unless it's a big mistake and then you get fired. But
Been there,
outside
done
of
that.
that, those types of mistakes, you're in a safe environment. When you're on your own as an entrepreneur and investor, you make a mistake, that can, either force you to stop doing what you're doing and shut down your business, to pivot completely. Obviously, it could have a financial impact. And then when we talk about life, like mistakes as a parent, there are some mistakes you can make as a parent. We all make tons of mistakes as parents because none of us had perfect parents to begin with. So we're all kind of learning
Except for
as
my
we go.
kids.
Except for your kids. Yes, your kids have perfect parents. But it's just part of the journey. It's part of life. Now, I do want to take a moment to talk about kind of your journey as an entrepreneur. Like you made that transition from, working for, other people, corporate life, to then franchise, small business, and then to an entrepreneur. What was that transition like going from working from somebody else to working for yourself, probably working more hours, to then now investing and then also kind of the new venture that we're working on together, which is really aimed to help, people thrive, which is the name of the business. Um, but yeah, so tell me about that transition and how you were able to, navigate going from, okay, this is my 9 to 5 to working for myself to investing, which is more passive, still active, but more passive. And now to what we're doing today.
You know what? Looking back, as even to my teenage years, I always thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur, that I wanted to have my own business. Um, but again, I think being an entrepreneur takes a special um, a special thought process and ability to act on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was raised by two wonderful parents. My dad worked his way up from being a sweeper in a warehouse to being president of that company. My mother, emigrated from Holland, didn't speak very much English, didn't speak any French, and she became a computer programmer. And that's the environment that I was raised. My dad went to work every day. He left the house at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he came back at 6 o'clock in the morning. You left at 6 o'clock in the evening. You left him alone for an hour to have his coffee because he needed to be quiet and not be spoken to. And my mother was the complete opposite. She needed to talk after coming back from work, or when she stopped working and when people started coming home, she needed to talk, right? But it was a very employee centric environment, and I knew I didn't want that. And I remember one of my in university, which I did not complete my degree, but one of the courses that I really appreciated the most was a course on entrepreneurship. And it was taught by this gentleman who was a fireman. He was a police chief and left all that behind to be a self-employed business operator, right? And I loved that course. I loved the idea of it. And I remember when I left and I went to work with my closest friend, his family business. I worked there, and it was a great training ground. I'll tell you, very entrepreneurial, but it was a very, very good training ground for me. Leaving there and knowing I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I wanted to do it, and I had this idea at the age of, I think, 21, and I didn't act on it, and I'm kicking myself to this day because there are many businesses like it today. I would have been ahead of the curve, and who knows where I would have been, right?
So what was the business idea?
It was to be as environmentally friendly as possible. So having a business, I guess similar idea to Bulk Barn, where would have dispensers. I don't like the idea of putting your hands in scoops of food and all that. So but having dispensers on the wall, and they could fill up their own containers, mm-hmm. whether it be soap or whatever, right? Nuts, it didn't matter. And I was telling people around me that I wanted to do that, and I thought it was a good idea. I was trying to get people who would want to invest or participate in the business, and I got laughed at, or honestly got laughed at. I didn't have the strength of character at the time to just say, screw it, and go it myself. And I think that's the clearest definition of a true entrepreneur, someone who does not care what other people think. They believe wholeheartedly in their idea, and they make it happen. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't ready at the time, right? I just wasn't. I wasn't prepared to take that responsibility or that risk, even though I had nothing to lose at the end of the day. But everybody was telling me I was crazy at the time to even think about doing that. But I had artwork done. I was sourcing out. Oh yeah, I was ready to do this. I even had a location picked out, everything. Yeah. I kicked myself in retrospect but I say I kicked myself. Things happen for you or to you when you're ready to accept them, right? Mm-hmm. I wasn't ready at the time. I was young. I was immature. I didn't have that strength of character to go through the process. So I went back to working as an employee in a small, low-paying job, and then I went back to school, and then realized, wow, I really don't like school. I don't know why I came back. It's not for me. And this coming from a parent who wants his kids to have degrees, regardless of what I profess to people, and got another job, worked myself up to a higher paying job, got a promotion to running a division for a big American corporation, had a beautiful corner office downtown Montreal, 21st floor. But the trade-off for that office and that six-figure salary was time. I had no time with my kids.
So that was from the time they were born until
Just
they.
before, yeah,
Okay.
I got that job before, um, just before I started, and then, until they were about, I think I left that job when my son was about two.
Mm-hmm.
And then because that company landed up closing 50 offices across Canada,
Wow.
I was offered a demotion to work in Toronto at more money, which I considered, but then I thought, you know what? They just closed 50 offices and they want me to move to Toronto. Yeah, no. So I took the package and I landed up starting a business with four gentlemen from Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
North York, I believe, and had a lot of fun. Built it from scratch, doing that same business, but doing it and having a lot of fun, making some money. And then there was I guess, a difference of ethics, morals, and direction. And considering I had no real ties, I owned a small amount of the company. So you keep the company. I'm out. This is my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept getting calls from Revenue Quebec. So in Quebec, it's Revenue Quebec that manages CRA, right? And anybody who has experienced CRA, they're pussycats next to Revenue Quebec. But I kept getting calls, and I'm no longer with the company, and I would direct them to the accountant or the last remaining partner. And this went on for a couple of years. Came home one day to a home. Now I had sold the family home,
Mm-hmm.
and I bought a new home. I wanted a fresh start. I came home one day with my two kids. It was a Friday afternoon from school, and there was a bailiff's letter on my front door. And I opened it up, and I will remember this number for the rest of my life. I owed the government $1.4 million.
Wow.
$1.4 million. Didn't understand why or how. Called my former partner, didn't get through, couldn't get answers. So I had to go to a lawyer, went through a consumer proposal, negotiated the amount down because there was never going to be $1.4 million coming from me at that point. And yeah, I had to start over again and went back to working for another company that I had been referred to by two different groups. Did that for what was supposed to be a 2-year contract. It turned into 3 years, and then I left there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I had had enough. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, period. That's when I started that franchise business. And then after getting into real estate investing, left that behind, and the rest is history. I'm doing the investing thing. I'm doing it with people I adore. I am one of the most fortunate people in the world. I tell you this. I'm surrounded by people that care about me, that help me, that I want to wake up to and speak with. And how can you ask for more? Really, at the end of the day. And you know, last year was a big challenge for me. I started the year off. I finally had a diagnosis after 4 years of going through test upon test upon test with different doctors, different hospitals, and no one could ever figure out. And I was left feeling that it was all in my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time an episode occurred was during a celebration dinner with my partner Alan, when we bought our first multifamily, and we were having a nice, beautiful dinner in Halifax, and I landed up giving that dinner back.
Oh.
Beautiful restaurant, 5-star, beautiful meal, beautiful bottle of wine, and that was the first episode, and it got progressively worse from there. And finally, I had to live through COVID because people weren't seeing people. You couldn't get into hospitals and all that, right? And then finally, I saw this one doctor who spent about, I don't know, 5 minutes with me. Didn't even examine me, knew exactly what was wrong with me, put me in for another test, confirmed it, had me go to the specialist, did the same test, did another test. And from the diagnosis to the surgical procedure, I think was somewhere along the lines of about 2 months, 2.5 months.
Mm-hmm.
So they got me in really well. And again, you know what? I tell you this story 4 years. It's not to complain about the medical system. Medicine's not exact, and I have a very rare condition that most doctors haven't even heard of. So I don't blame anybody. I'm very appreciative. The procedure was a success. I was able to eat within days. I was on a liquid diet for 2 months, only liquid. So that was amazing. And then had a few challenges with my mental health over the course of the year. COVID had taken a toll on me. This condition had taken a toll on me. Life in general had taken a toll on me. Not to ask for any sympathy, I don't look for any. But it was a challenge, and I tried to keep my head above water and focus on others. And, you can't do that until you're ready to look at yourself and fix yourself, or take care of yourself, rather.
So from that standpoint, like you mentioned, mental health and going through COVID, and I think a lot of people, experienced that, where they had challenges, where you were isolated, and it kind of brought forth, what was really happening internally for a lot of people, because most of our lives prior to that, a lot of people were just busy, so they didn't actually spend time focusing on themselves, their physical health, their mental health. So what was the breaking point for you when you're like, something, I need to address this?
I can't go into a specific, but um, I crashed, and it came to the point where I needed to get out of the house for a bit. So I went to visit one of my sisters, and we drove a couple of hours to where my parents are interned in Southern Ontario, and had lunch where we used to have lunch with my father when my mother was being treated at the palliative care unit.
Mm-hmm.
And on the drive back to where my sister was staying, that was the ultimate crash. I had to leave the next morning. I was planning on staying for a couple of days. I had to leave, and on the way home, I had to stop. I got a hotel room. I was paralyzed. I couldn't go home. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew I couldn't do anything. I couldn't see anyone. So I got a room. I ended up staying there for 2 days, and I had a friend who insisted on getting me on a helpline, or the police were going to knock on the hotel room. And that was just the beginning of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Not something I really like to look back on, but I do from time to time as a reminder. And after the second day, I went home. It was a snowstorm, and I took my time driving home, and I got help. The beginning of help. And it was a challenging time for my family, I'll tell you. A really challenging time. I was not pleasant to be around. I hid it well from anybody else, but I didn't hide it well really from my family. And I was dealing with some other stuff as well that I won't get into because it's not my story to tell. But again, you know what? I look at it now like I do how my first marriage ended. had I not gone through that crash, I wouldn't have the inner strength and the mindset to be dealing with what I'm dealing with now, which is, I ended 2022 with a cancer diagnosis, right? Um, and you know what? I can honestly say I am happy today. And for a good part of 2022, I was not. And it took me a while to understand that I was not unhappy because of other people or decisions other people were making. I was just unhappy and I wasn't equipped. And I don't even know if happy is the right word. Um, but at the age of 54, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which anybody who knows me wouldn't have been surprised. But I also was diagnosed with anxiety, severe anxiety and depression, which for the most part I hid very well, from myself included. And, I continue to see a therapist, which is good for me. It's my way of just unloading the garbage, but also building up my tools to keep moving forward in a positive manner and how to cope with things. Um, and I've found my contentness, my happiness now. Life is not always perfect. It's messy, it's dirty, but I I'm happy with the path that I'm following. I don't try to control the path of others, although I do fall into that trap once in a while, but I catch it, and everybody has their path to follow. My kids, my siblings, my wife, my friends, and I can give my opinion, but it's not for me to try and coax them into changing. They are who they are, and they get to make that decision. And I need to just focus on me. How can I be the best version of me? Um, and it's one day at a time, really. For business, I plan ahead, but how I'm going to be tomorrow, I don't know. What's going to be thrown at me tomorrow, I have no idea. I'm dealing with things one at a time, and that's the best plan for me. Are there things that I want in the future? Yes, there are things I want in the future. I don't get to control all of that. So will it happen? I don't know. Will it happen? I don't know. But it's not going to impact today.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people that might listen to this might not understand, everything that you went through last year, from surgery to, being diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, depression, and then at the end of the year, being diagnosed with cancer. That, we're about a month and a half, not even, away from that diagnosis. Then you just finished your first chemo treatment a week ago.
Mm-hmm. It's a week, yeah.
That you are now in a place where you're happy. I think one of the things that does happen for some people, when we get bad news or going through a challenging time, it almost helps us appreciate life. Because I think a lot of people walk through life, we know we're mortal, right? But a lot of people go through life as if they are immortal, that there is no end. So, it's amazing to hear you say, now that you're happy. I also think there is also purpose, that I know we have with what we're trying to build as entrepreneurs right now, and not for ourselves. And I know you say this all the time. We're not martyrs. But we are doing this to help other people. We're doing this in service of others, because we believe, both of us, that, I don't know if I'd call it our responsibility or our mission or what word, but a strong desire to help others get to where they want to be, despite the personal challenges and struggles that we may go through. And, it's just something, I think, it's not in everybody. And if more people looked inward and really tried to discover who they are as people, and then could then give more than they took, this world would be a much better place.
You know what? I don't even go that far anymore. It used to, going back to the example when I had that bailiff's letter, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the very beginning, I was very angry with my partner, who I considered a close friend, right? Took me a while to understand I was angry with it. But a number of years later, it occurred to me that, you know what? It wasn't for me to be angry with him. He had no responsibility to me. He didn't do anything to me. Ultimately, the mistake that was made was one of ignorance on my part. I should have informed myself and had myself removed as a director. And had I done that, none of that would have happened. But it was a lesson that I was meant to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the worst lessons are the best lessons. I think you become more at ease with yourself when you can let go of what other people should be. Other people are going to be what they are, and you have no say over the matter. I am never going to be someone who's going to be on a pulpit preaching to someone about, what you're doing is wrong anymore. I'm not going to tell people they're living life the wrong way. I think ultimately we all do the best that we can. We try to find whatever happiness is by our own definition. Our priorities might be skewed in different areas. But ultimately, if you're focusing on your thoughts, your actions, your well-being, it really doesn't matter what other people are thinking about you, saying about you, doing. They have to come to that conclusion themselves. If it's something we choose to do, can we present them with options if they come to us and are receptive to that? Yes. But until people are receptive, it's not going to happen. Like, I was not receptive. Kurt, had I not had that breakdown, I probably would be worse today than I am. But, I got a cancer diagnosis, but before Christmas, a cancer diagnosis, and maybe a year ago, that would have put me over the edge. Really, it would have put me over the edge. And I'll tell you, before I found out it was cancer, I was close to the edge. All I could think about is what my mother went through. And my mother had an incurable cancer. And all that was coming through my mind at that point is, if I have that one, I'm flying to New Zealand and I'm going to take the highest bungee jump without a bungee cord. I'm not going to go through that, right? And I see that, I listen to myself say that now and think, wow, I hadn't gotten as far as I thought I had at that point. But today it's like, you know what? I'm blessed. I have a cancer that is curable. Will it come back? Probably, but they'll just do it again, and I can live a normal life. They're not going to tear anything out of me. I'm not going to be maimed. Treatment was
pretty darn easy. I've had relatively low. This is one of the problems. I lose my words. One. You know, hardly anything bad has happened to me. I think I have
Yeah,
had some
side effects are
inconvenient
very.
side effects. I had some inconveniences, like I have a metallic taste, and the food is kind of making me nauseous right now, and stuff like that. But overall, you know what? The drugs are great, and the nurses, the doctors, the staff have been phenomenal. Um, the next treatment will be half the time, uh, and the prognosis is I'm going to have a full recovery. Period. I have
Mhm.
some inconveniences. Think about that for a moment. I live in a house. I can eat whatever is given to me, you know, if I wasn't nauseous. But like, I'm not lacking for food. I'm not lacking for money. I'm not lacking for a place to live. I'm not lacking for friends and family and support. The medical system has been phenomenal. Um, there are people who live on the street. I don't have a right to complain. I don't. I do sometimes, but I catch myself and I say, you know what? I'm I have it pretty good. I have it pretty good. I get messages from people that I never thought I would be able to read messages like that, or hear voicemails like that. Um, I never thought I would be one to inspire anyone. You mentioned the word purpose. Had you asked me what my purpose was earlier in 2022, I would tell you I am envious of anybody who knows what their purpose is, because I had no clue what my purpose is. I don't. Even today, I still question it a little bit, right? But I'm not going to put it out there, but I know what my purpose is now. I do, and I I want to live with that. And yes, I'm going to need reminders now and then, and I'm going to keep using the tools that I have. Um, I'm going to continue to be a good patient and take what they're asking me to take, and I'm going to do my best. And that's all anybody can ask of you. Just do your best. I try to be as good a person as I can be. I'm a flawed man. I make mistakes. Um, I can be a bit of a, part of my language, bastard sometimes when I'm a grump. Um, but overall, I think I'm a decent human being, and I have a genuine desire to be kind, and I keep working on it.
So a few things, there you talk about you've now found your purpose, which, definitely not obligated or asking to share. But how important is finding purpose in kind of going through this stage of life, in terms of not necessarily with having cancer, battling that, going through mental health, but just in general when you look forward.
Um, I think it makes it easier to have focus, to take enjoyment from life. Um, you're not just bouncing around. Um, Not to say I have everything figured out, not by a long shot. And I'm curious to see what things will look like when I look back a year from now. But you know, it just helps your overall attitude, how much you appreciate the day, the moment, instead of focusing backwards on what has made you angry, people who have wronged you. No one has wronged me. People have done what they think is best for them. And in the moment, I was, okay, you've wronged me, you're dead to me. Um, and worrying about what people are going to do to or for me in the future. No one has an obligation to do anything to or for me in the future. I have an obligation to take the necessary steps to keep me on my path. And again, are there people that I want to take certain paths? Like my kids, for instance. Yes, but they have to follow their path, and I can appreciate that. I
So where
can
does
worry about them.
so where does your path take you in 5 years or 10 years?
Um, I like working. I don't want to work a lot, but I enjoy working. I enjoy working with people. I don't enjoy just sitting in front of a computer or filling out paperwork. That brings me absolutely no joy. It's a necessary evil. And if I can pawn it off on others, I absolutely will. But working with people, that that is how I fill my tank. And I need stuff outside of the family to do that. Part of my tank is filled up by my family, and part of it is by things that I do. I think we all need something that, I don't like the word control, but something that's ours that we can mold, right? And that is important to me. Like we were mentioning, having a training event, and I had a discussion with my oncologist and Pam, and my family doesn't necessarily think it's a good idea for me to go. But my explanation, or my wording to the doctor was, listen, I understand I need to take steps to take care of my health, right? I absolutely agree with that. Is there a scenario where I can travel safely? Because yes, I agree it's important. I have to take care of my physical self. I plan on being around for a long time. But having gone through what I've gone through over the last few years, I need to take care of this too. And for me, it's a huge part of who I am to be part of something that I'm helping to create. I want to be there. So it'll be pretty much a last minute call, but I think I can be there. Depending on how I feel, the second chemo treatment probably will be rougher than the first, I'm told. So in 5 years, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know I'll be doing something for a period of time, each day, each week. I would like to travel a lot more. I would love, I haven't traveled the world a lot. I've gone to vacation destinations, but I haven't traveled the world a lot. And that is something. There are some places that are a priority for me. Number one being France, where my grandparents were from. And there's a family vineyard, and I missed out on a family reunion there. I would love to go there and crack a bottle open with my family name on it. I would love to go to Holland and visit the small town of Venlo, where my mother was raised, and some of my cousins who are much older than I am were raised, and watched the paratroopers from the United States, from England, coming down onto the German border and participating in rescuing and transporting Jews out of Germany safely across and out of Holland as well. I would love to see that. It's important to me. So I will do that. And, I would love to see other parts of the world rather, and just experience different people, experience different things that I haven't been exposed to other than watching TV or reading books. And I want to see that. I want to be there. I want to sit down in Paris, have a coffee, a croissant, and people watch for hours. I want to go spend days on end walking through the Louvre. Not that I'm a Mr. Artsy man, but you know, just seeing the people, seeing the architecture, seeing people's faces, how they react to the various pieces of art. Um, I want to experience people. I want to be able to go to Spain or Portugal and not be able to get any work done because it's it's yeah siesta time. Um, you know, in places where they don't even serve coffee to go, have Italian food that is not what we think Italian food is. Just these are things that I want to do, and I want to meet interesting people. I want to meet interesting people. I want to learn from. I want to learn from. I want to see and hear different perspectives on life. Um, I want to have conversations. I want to get back to how things used to be. I want to have conversations with people who have opposing views and be able to still be friends and not hate someone because they have this political affiliation and I have that political affiliation and whatever. Like I spent too many years where my life was black and white, and I want to welcome gray and I want to welcome color. So I don't know what it looks like. I really don't. I just know I want it all.
It almost feels like, with you describing, that you do know what you want. It is very vivid. Like, it's so vivid that I felt I was sitting at that table with you in Paris having a coffee. So you do know what you want. And I think, not think, I know you will get there, because you have the purpose now to get you through whatever you need to get through, to be sitting on the streets of Paris enjoying a coffee.
It'll happen. It'll happen. You know what? I give myself permission to now. Where when I had the opportunity to go to that family reunion, I came up with every excuse in the book on why I shouldn't or couldn't go.
Not
I
anymore.
can't go because I can't afford to bring my whole family, and I can't go if they're not going. And, no, no, now it's I'm going to go back to the mindset, the mentality that what, there may be a problem, but there is a solution as well, and I'm going to focus on the solution now, not the problem.
Yeah. And also, it goes to the point that life is meant to be lived.
Yes, yes, yeah. You get a lot of us make the mistake of just existing. I don't want to exist. I've had, and it shocks me when people have said this to me. And if anybody who has said this to me listens to this, I'm speaking of you, and there have been a few of you now, where I don't know why or how, where I've given them some inspiration, made them feel like they can do something that they didn't think that they could do. I've opened up their eyes or mind to something, and it shocks me every day when I get messages. It really does. It shocks me. And, I, we've had this conversation in the past, and I'm not a huge fan of most of those people who feel the need to get up and preach and build their following. But for the longest time, I had shut down my personal social media, right? And I had one by necessity. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that person who is arrogant enough to think that I'm the reason you're going to succeed. I want to be part of your path. And if I can introduce you to other people who can be part of your path, that is what turns my crank. That's what fills my cup. I don't need to be at the front of the room. I've learned that I enjoy supporting. And do I need to take a leadership role sometimes? Yeah, I do, and I'm okay with that. But I'm also okay with not being the leader. And maybe that wisdom comes with a lot of self-reflection and a lot of help and a lot of craziness. But this is who I am now, and I will continue to be that flawed person, and I'm okay with that. I have a lot left in my tank. I have a lot left to do, see, experience, people to meet, people to help me. When we do these events that we do sometimes, or we get on these calls, I started doing those calls for someone else, and I never got paid for it, and I never wanted to get paid for it. It was part of me scratching an itch that I had, right? And I realized that I really enjoy that. I enjoy that, and I don't need people to tell other people, Rob is this or Rob is that. It doesn't matter. I'm doing it. I get more out of that than the people I'm helping. So in a way, I'm being selfish. So the future is what it's going to be. I don't have any control over that. I don't have a crystal ball, but if I take it a day at a time, an hour at a time, a moment at a time, a step at a time, things will happen. And I will live that life that I want.
That is amazing. And I think, that message hopefully resonates with everybody that listens to this. And, we've had, many conversations, more so in the past couple of years, gotten to really know each other, respect each other, work together. And I'm really looking forward to continuing this journey with you. And I appreciate you being the first guest on the Life Balance Mentor podcast. I know I learned a lot more about you, which is amazing. And hopefully your story and what you've shared inspires others.
You know what? If they get one thing out of it, that makes me happy. You know what? If you can just make choices and decisions that are right for you, and just stay in the moment and appreciate it, because that moment's gone. That moment's gone. And that may be my biggest regret in life, that I didn't appreciate the moments. Mm-hmm. And they don't come back.
No, they don't.
So,
well, I think we'll end it there. So thank you to everybody listening to Life Balance Mentor. Again, thank you, Rob, for being a guest today and sharing and being open. And as I said, the future is bright. We'll continue to move forward. We'll continue to help others through any platform that we can. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening to Life Balance Mentor Podcast with Kurt Warner. To help create balance in your life, follow me on social media. The links are below in the podcast description. Don't forget to visit the website at lifebalancementor.com. And as always, stay balanced.